Well, hello there, beloved Youest listeners. Wow, today's a really, really special episode, special day. We are getting to talk with one of my favorite, she may not realize this, but she has been a mentor and a guide and a teacher with me, for a long time. And I'm so honored to introduce you to Tara Brach. Tara is an internationally known meditation teacher, psychologist, and author of best-selling Radical Acceptance and Radical Compassion. Her popular weekly podcast is downloaded 3 million times a month. Along with Jack Kornfield, Tara leads the Mindfulness Meditation Teacher Certification Program, otherwise known as MMTCP, serving participants in over 50 countries. Tara's also on Insight Timer, which is one of my favorite meditation apps. And oh my goodness, I'm so honored. I'm so grateful you're here. We were speaking a little bit beforehand and just excited to bring you in and have people really just get nourished from your wisdom and your grace and your authenticity. Tara, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, it's a total pleasure, Julie. I know we've been wanting to do this for a long time, so I'm glad we've got our moment.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's interesting because when we met, I had come to your meditations before that in Bethesda, but when we met recently, it was right before this pandemic. And I'm actually grateful we're connecting now because I feel the what you're teaching, what we were just talking about is really needed now more than ever. Yeah. One of the things you were saying is we were talking about, I love this quote, that we're in this earthquake in history. Like we've never experienced this before. I'm just curious, with all of the practices that you use and teach and have, you don't even have to be on the spectrum of anxious or, I think this time is bringing up a lot of fear, no matter who you are. Just wondering, it's like, where do we begin? But maybe just to give some thought to share, how can we start to really be okay in the moment? What are some of the tools you're using? What are you teaching? Would love to hear.
Well, in a way, it starts with just honestly acknowledging this is hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for everybody. I haven't run into anybody that doesn't have some layer in them where it's just difficult. And so in a way, if we can get that, if we can be just raw and real with that this is hard, it's so uncertain. We have no idea when anything will change. We know it's not going to go back to how it was. So many of us are struggling, whether if it's not physically or medically, financially, and with the amazing deep divides in our society, our hearts are breaking. So a lot of loss, and I'm with you. Anxiety is the big one, loneliness. 28% of our population in the United States lives alone. And the isolation, we're meant to be connected. And of course, people are connecting online, but we need to touch each other and hug each other and smell and see and be with energetically. And so it's hard. So that's the first piece, Julie, that I find if I can just pause and say, wow, ouch, this is hard. Yeah. Right away, there's a little more space and a little more tenderness, and to know that we're not alone. I mean, everybody's experiencing their own versions, but other people are having a hard time too. It just enlarges us. So that would be the first step always. Yeah. And the underlying theme I'm finding that's just the most important is to know when we get stressed, we turn against ourselves. It's just universal. We get stressed. Of course, we blame others. There's no question. But even under that, more primary is we go into what I call the trance of unworthiness, where we, in some way, we take the feels bad and turn it into I'm bad. Mm-hmm. And it's really important to bring that into consciousness, because if it's unconscious, it deepens a sense of loneliness. It makes us more anxious and separate. And it actually interferes with being able to do things in a way where we feel like we're bringing our intelligence and our creativity forward. Being at war with ourselves is one of the deepest sufferings there is. And these kind of times in our history actually put us at war with ourselves and each other in an odd way at the time we most need to befriend.
Yeah. You remind me, we were speaking earlier and I was saying, and I'm just thinking for anyone listening, because I know I'm not alone with this, part of what has happened, I so resonate. I mean, it's truth, the being at war with yourself. And then we also have just not being able to connect with others. And I sometimes feel bad that I'm feeling this way. I have sometimes a house full of people, kids, and noise. And it's really, I'm a sensitive human being and it's really overwhelming. And and I think just that being okay, like saying it's tough and just not turning against myself, that's been a practice in itself, honestly.
I'm glad you bring that up, because there's one thing to be alone and then feel the loneliness, and it's another to be with others, but actually feel divided or tense, or a feeling of resentment because of the way others that we're with are behaving, and actually not like the people who are with. We love them, but we might not like them. And then we feel worse about ourselves. So the first steps are just to say, this is hard, and to have a real commitment to being kind towards ourselves. And this is something you and I were talking about a little before we started recording, which is, and I've seen this through all the decades of whether it's teaching or as a therapist, the juncture of real transformation for people is when there's a deepening commitment to be kind to ourselves. When some part of us resolves, I've spent all these earlier years not liking myself, blaming myself, and how it makes us small and how it stops us from being intimate with others. And when we really sense how many life moments have we lost because we felt unworthy in some way or bad. And then if that becomes really conscious, we can commit ourselves, say, okay, henceforth, my intention is to be kind to myself.
Mm.
And I know for myself, if I'm in a bad mood,
Yeah.
usually if I dig down underneath that bad mood, in some way I'm feeling like something's wrong with me. Like in some way, I am really not liking myself. And if I can even have the thought, please be kind. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, and not even act kind or feel kind, just please may I be kind. It really makes a difference. And so I'll tell you a practice I've started, Julie, that
Yeah.
started now, it's been a year and a half or so, where I'll bookend my day, and I meditate and practice at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day formally. And I build into that practice some moments where I'm praying to, sometimes the prayer is, please may I be open-hearted towards myself and all beings. Please may I remember love. Please teach me about kindness, but I'm in some way intending so that here we are and we're talking, and that my heart's actually authentically feeling tender, and open to the realness of you. So that's the prayer. And then at the end of the day, I'll reset that prayer, I'll kind of bookend it. And I'll also kind of scan and notice, well, what happened today? Like when Julie and I spoke, was it on automatic, or was there a real sense of here we are, And let's say I see that, oh my gosh, I was not very present. Then be kind, it's okay. There's a bit of a trance going on, but it deepens my resolve. So if I don't blame myself, then I can deepen my resolve. And the next day, typically there's more remembering. So I just invite us all, because we are in this time of history where it's like when the world falls apart, or when something in our life falls apart, it creates the disruption actually creates the possibility of creating new patterns that are more aligned with our heart, let's make that happen. And that takes intention. So in some way, having a practice where we're saying, please, may I be open-hearted, actually creates a field that magnifies and opens us to that.
That is so, so beautiful. I love this practice, the bookending. It's so I'm thinking like, how could you not be present? You feel so present at all the times that I've experienced you. But I love, like, thank you for reminding us all we're all human here on the same human boat and
Totally.
on the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
boat. Um, you said something I just want to come to. I'm curious. You said the that it helps you when you do the scan at night, what happened, just being kind, not blaming yourself. And you said it helps you the next day with more remembering. And my ears are like, ooh, what's the remembering? Maybe just talk a little bit about what you meant by that. Because
Yeah, yeah. So let's say at nighttime, I look back and I had a conversation with one of my sisters, and I was a little bit judgmental or snippy or whatever it is. 'Cause I speak with my sisters regularly, and sisters can be less awake in some ways to each other. Then noticing it that night, it and not judging allows me to feel, wow, this matters to me.
oh yeah.
And the more that we are in touch with what really matters, the more there's a remembrance that keeps on realigning us, or whether we can count on the compass of our heart to guide us more. So
Mm,
in the Buddhist tradition, setting our aspiration, like just consciously saying, this is what matters to me, is an actual concrete practice. Because if we make it conscious and we say, like, in any moment, if you say, well, what really, really matters this moment? Like this moment, what really, really matters? And you can get to that place that's sincere and say, what matters is that I am present and I'm real, authentic, and then in those moments of remembering your aspiration, you actually come to inhabit what matters. It's a power. So that's why the book ending really works. Setting that aspiration or prayer, it creates like this gravitational field that helps to more and more have us inhabit and live from our hearts.
so beautiful. Well, it reminds me of I was saying earlier that I feel like in this time I've been walking around with my hands on my heart almost literally. I wake up with them, I go to bed with them. It's like just that tenderness, which I guess you could say is actually maybe a new beautiful habit. I wasn't doing it in February. I would try to remember to do some Reiki on myself, but like I'm literally holding my heart because it can feel a little unsteady out there.
And we need to. I often, and by the way, I love that you do that, because this in particular, to be able to, put our hand on our heart or else in our cheek or in some way, we have our relationship with ourselves is usually either we're ignoring and neglecting or we're at ourselves, but we're rarely tender. And it helps to decondition that that kind of armoring in any moment that we're actually gentle with ourselves. So this is to actually enact it, embody it, put our hand on our heart. And if you're listening right now and you try it and put your hand on your heart and then actually vary the tenderness, the touch, so it's tender, and
Mm.
just sense that you can send a message and have the energy of the message go through your hand. It's much more powerful at evoking a sense of relaxing back into love than if you tell yourself, oh, I should be nicer. So it's a powerful practice. And whatever we practice gets stronger. So I love that you're doing it every day, because you're actually creating new neural pathways.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. I hadn't even honestly, it's been a bit of jumping back to what you said, I had like chills all down my arms. And I know a lot of people listening struggle with worthiness and attacking oneself. I have an autoimmune condition, and I'm absolutely convinced that it's connected to the years I attacked myself, was
Mm, mm,
attacking. And
mm.
to not have guilt or shame, or just to be like,
Mm.
that's what happened. But this, learning to rewire in this way, I mean, it's something, for me, it's become like a bottom, like it's a non-negotiable. If I start being crappy to myself, and I think this is what you were saying, it like you get into that spiral. And so it's become a necessity, because things feel very unsteady right now.
Well, it's so interesting that some of us, we have to get kind of knocked over the head by a physical condition to
Yeah.
soften up.
Yeah, I'm one of them.
Yeah, no, well, I'm with you. I spent a number of years having to deal with major illness, but it taught me so much about how to listen more deeply to myself and others. So that's really powerful. And each of us needs to find a pathway to self-compassion. And there's different pathways. I mean, for some of us, it's put hand on the heart and say a message. And for others, it's imagining the light and love of another being. And it doesn't matter what we think the source of the love is, whether we think, well, my high self is holding my inner child, or whether we think that, the Buddha is showering, or Divine Mother is showering. It doesn't matter. What matters is that whatever resonates for us, we keep practicing that, so we have more and more access to just feeling loving and loved. That's what really matters. And it's an experiment. When I work with people, as a teacher, I'm saying, well, where do you feel the most, at least a tendril of feeling loved? What does that for you? And maybe it's their dog, which is great.
Yeah, really.
I've often called on my dog,
Yeah, very loyal, very easy to love. Absolutely.
Exactly. And for
Yeah.
some people, I'm looking outside, it's the sense of the earth mother and the trees and the energy of the earth. And for others, it's more of a formless, often for me, it's kind of a formless sense of the love that's in this whole universe. But I very specifically imagine and sense that presence washing over me. And what happens is it dissolves the sense of separation. And then we
Mm.
discover there's no outside entity loving us, really. We are one with loving. And so we need a bridge. We need a temporary bridge where we might sense that our dog, the Divine Mother, our best friend is loving us. But if we learn to use that pathway enough, we start dissolving into that field and realizing it's always already here. We just needed a kind of link.
Mm. I am so with you. I so feel you. I've used many things. Like sometimes, honestly, it's been, I love food. So sometimes it's beautiful fruit that helps. I'm
Mm,
serious, like
mm, mm,
really feeling that connection, animals, people. But I love what you just said about, basically that love. What I heard is, it's already in us as us, but you can't, it doesn't exist in a duality conception, which I think in our world we often go to, it's either right or wrong. And it's like love just, it supersedes all of that.
and we're always told, well, you should love yourself, you can't count on other people. And sometimes we're feeling too regressed. Like there are
Mm,
times that I'm just feeling small and young and hurting. And what I'll do is I'll just speak out to some sense of the beloved in the universe and say, please love me. I'll just say, please love me, as a kind of child calling on a mother,
mm,
And if I get in touch with my longing and I express it that way, then I become available to be loved. And I feel that energy holding me, and I imagine it and invoke it and feel it.
mm.
And then there's that dissolving. And then I discover, oh, it was already here. But I needed to go through that duality to arrive again at the oneness.
I love how you just said that. You also said something that made me, that just little neurons firing, which is,
Yeah.
I feel like part of this, what's happening on it, and I'd like to hear your thoughts, what really might be happening on an energetic kind of greater level. I know you just talked about, I really relate to that concept of divine mother, great mother, and it's almost like learning to, mother ourselves is kind of what just came to me a little bit. Maybe it's through asking divine mother or great spirit to give us that feeling. But it's like, I don't know, part of me has been looking at this experience as learning to give that to myself.
That's certainly a very useful way to think of it. For me, ultimately, it's finding whatever way of paying attention
Yeah.
reconnects me with the field of loving, where there's not a self that's giving love or a self that's receiving love.
Yeah.
But on the way there, it seems like there's a self that's giving and receiving.
I got you. That's beautifully said. Because in the end, right, to get to oneness, you might need to go through feeling like
The ideas of a self, or the ideas of, a self that's too small to hold herself, and we just have to go with wherever we are and find our way back home again. But I often think of it in evolutionary terms, Julie. I'm fascinated by just using the metaphor of evolution, and because everything's a metaphor, it's all words. But one of the evolutionary psychologists said that we're not survival of the fittest, we're survival of the nurtured.
oh,
And to me, that's so powerful that
oh,
that there's like through evolutionary history,
yeah,
the emergence of the separate self had to use fight, flight, freeze, and had a feeling of separation and how to enhance itself by grasping things and how to defend itself.
yeah,
But as we keep on evolving, we discover a more whole dimension of our being, where our healing and freedom comes from collaborating and communing and nurturing, not from grasping and pushing away and fighting. And I feel like the whole arc of our human evolution is to move from the more primitive separate selves fighting each other and trying to outdo each other and defending,
yes,
to realizing our collectiveness and acting out of that shared belonging. That's the arc that we're on, and that here we are in a crisis, which of course is always danger and opportunity, as we know, the Chinese script. And the danger is, and the pain is, that huge numbers are suffering.
right,
And the opportunity is that this, in some way, urges us towards regarding ourselves more collaboratively, so that we're here to make our decisions come for the benefit of the earth, our mother, and all beings, so that we start releasing some of these hierarchies that have kept us at war, so that we're not living in caste systems. If I think of the biggest wound of our contemporary society, it's the caste systems we're living in, where we have some groupings of people identifying themselves as superior, or some groups identified by the society as inferior. And we know the horror of it racially. We're coming to terms with that. It also exists with gender and with ethnicities. And what people often forget about is it exists with other living creatures, so that humans consider them at the high caste and that non-human animals are less. And it allows us to desensitize and cause incredible harm. We're incredibly cruel towards other beings because we are in that caste system that we think we're superior. So this is a bit long-winded, but I feel like that's our trajectory, is
yeah,
to wake up out of that separateness that ends up causing harm to others,
yeah,
and realizing we belong together. We are of
mm,
one energy, awareness, spirit, and we all will be a lot more healthy and happy if we can perceive that, if we can see the sacred in each other and live towards that.
I have like, again, goosebumps all down my arms. I'm so with you with that. That is so, you said that so beautifully. And I can sometimes hear questions like, how do we do this? Like, where do we begin? Right. So I really believe that anyone listening, I know you're sensitive, big-hearted soul who wants to make an impact. And it's like, how do we start? I don't even want to say tearing down the caste system, because tearing is not a loving way to look at it, but how do we dissolve
Wake
it?
up. Yeah, wake up
Wake
so
up.
that we're no longer identified in ways that have us play those roles.
Yeah.
And I think it comes back to what we started with, where we have to be able to come into presence
Mm.
and be able to, with our inner life, be able to belong to our inner life. This is all about discovering belonging. And that means both sensing our vulnerability, in a moment that you can acknowledge you're hurting, there's going to be more compassion, more belonging,
Mm.
but also
Yes.
to be able to see past your own masks of identity and see the goodness and the beauty, like that each one of us has a longing to wake up love, and each one of us wants to love and be loved, and we have a longing to be all that we can be, and we want to be honest deep down, and we want to know truth. It's like to really look at ourselves or look at another person. I look at you and I see who's behind those eyes and know it's the same awareness and the same longing for love and the same tenderness that's looking through these eyes. And I sometimes think that we start simple. We start seeing our own vulnerability and goodness, belonging to our own being, and then seeing each other in that way. And I'm thinking of Congressman John Lewis in his final words, and which he had published after his death, and talking about how really at the heart of all transformational societal movements
Yep.
is this reverence for life, is seeing the sacred in ourselves, each other, and all beings. So we train in that. We bookend our day and have the intention to move through the day where we just honor the goodness and we feel tenderness to where there's pain and live out of that. And we do it with ourselves, and you and I do it. And then we know that because we belong to this society, and let's say with racism, because that's such a gash, such an immediate bleeding wound, that we make the effort to widen the circle of compassion and really get where we're creating separation, how we're participating in racism, that we have the courage to acknowledge, of course, if we're conditioned by this society, every one of us is got unseen bias. Every one of us subscribes on some level to superior or inferior. To be dedicated to waking up out of that. That's something we can do this week, this month, this year, and this moment.
Yeah, that is a really, this whole idea, I think that the bottom line is waking up and being, you talked about it before, being present. And one of the questions I get a lot is, and I know it's probably going to sound so basic to you, but with meditation, with getting still, with learning to become present, some of the gifts of this pandemic has been if you choose, you can have a lot more time to be present with yourself. For somebody, I have so many people that are like, I just can't sit still. I actually used to be, I sometimes still struggle with that. My thoughts are going, I feel like it's like basic 101 question, but we've talked about waking up in presence, and I'm thinking, you know what? I know, because I get these questions all the time, like, where do I begin? How do I be loving with myself when my mind is like all over the place?
Well, actually, I deeply appreciate the question. I really do, because even people that are like, seasoned meditators, we all go through stuff. I know when I don't feel well, to try to sit with not feeling well is really yucky. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So here's what I found is that we need to have a flexible idea of what it means to train our hearts and minds. That meditation does not mean sitting still. Meditation means that in some way we're on purpose intending towards presence. But we can do it in many different ways. So there are some days that if you're really antsy and restless, just do a walk, and you might not go for a long meandering walk, but just walk a certain circuit somewhere where you're just going around and around or back and forth on a path, and let the movement and let the touch of your feet on the earth and let the sounds of what's around you and the nature be part of your meditation. Nature is such a pathway for homecoming. I mean, it's like when
Mm.
we're in nature, more of us remembers that we're made of the elements, and we kind of we relax out of that ego kind of tight prison. So be experimental. If you're feeling like it's hard to sit still, do yoga and meditate on the sensations of moving. Yoga is a form of meditation. Or go for a walk.
Mm.
Or you can lie on your back and, explore what it means to just let go, let go, let go of any tension anywhere in your body. Um, or if there's something you love to sing, just that's really simple, sing that, sing that. Or if there's something you like to do with your hands, like knit or pottery or cook something, but just let the intention be present.
Mm. Oh goodness. I literally, as you're speaking, I'm like, I feel so relaxed. I feel like that just gave permission. It's funny. This is interesting, little personal, but this morning I had a hard time. I don't know what was it. And I know I'm not the only one. I had my timer. I sat there. I had my hand in my heart, and I had all these ideas come in, to-do list. I mean, it was really, if someone could have, it was like
Yeah.
unbelievable how many ideas came out. And I was like, well, that was definitely not a meditation that I felt calm and at all. And I missed my walk. And it's funny. You just said, and I'm like, I was in the shower. I love Bonnie Raitt. She's just one of my old time faves. And I started singing Angel from Montgomery, which is an old song, but I don't know. Something was like, sing, get it out. And I had never would have equated. I just thought, okay, no one can hear me, so I'm going to let it out. But, it was really, it did bring more presence to the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you
Beautiful.
said that it like gives permission.
It's so crazy that we think we are so quick to like impose on meditation
Yeah.
all the same routines we do on everything else, where we set standards, we make it rigid, and then we get down on ourselves. And I
Yes.
think that the most basic commitment of meditation should be not to judge your meditation, no
I
matter
love
what, no matter what. It's like, as one friend says, you put your tush on the cushion, you take what you get.
Oh, I love that. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
and it really doesn't matter. I mean, our minds have no shame. They go everywhere. It's like, we often liken it to training a puppy, and of course a puppy's going to go to the corner and is going to pee somewhere, and you're going to have to clean it up. The mind just does stuff.
Yeah. Really.
So I figure my guidelines for meditation are really forgive whatever comes up, and to be curious, because curiosity helps a whole lot, and just be basically friendly towards yourself. And if
Mm,
you can do anything, and if you keep those as your guidelines with
mm.
some intention towards presence, it's gonna serve waking up.
Mm.
Yeah.
Goodness, that is, I love this. Put your tush on the cushion and then no judging. That is like my new motto. I'm putting
Yeah.
that up after. That's so perfect.
And if you don't want to sit down on the cushion, then, do something else, but it's the same idea.
Yeah, the intention though, which is the power. That's the power. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So before we wrap, I always like to ask. I call these heart flares, where you have this like, I didn't say this yet, or just a welling of wisdom that your heart wants to share. And so I always like to ask if there might be a heart flare that you still have, or frankly, honestly, talk as long as you want, because it's so
Oh,
delicious. I'm like, actually, you could just, as long as you have whatever the heart flares are, Tara, keep going.
well, what's the main thing that feels really, I'm loving what's happening here, because I feel like what we're doing is we keep asking ourselves, so what really matters? Well, what really, really matters about this?
Yeah.
And um, there's one Zen teacher who says, the most important thing is remembering the most important thing. And I love that, because we go into a trance every day. I mean, we all go on automatic. And then what tugs us around is more from the limbic system. It's more I want to get more comfortable. I want to avoid this, judging that. And if the more that we do what I call the sacred pause, we're just like right now, we just slow down, what really matters. And then what kind of comes up is, for me, it's appreciation. Like I'm very much appreciating the space that you're creating, and the just the goodness of your heart that wants to invite people into that space. And really what we've been talking about is, how do we hold hands and wake up together?
Mm.
And one of the things, and I just said that out loud to you, and it reminds me that we need to say it out loud more.
Yeah.
I'm feeling our connection as we do this, and my appreciation for you, and just that heart to heart. And I think we need to name it more. We're a little scared of each other and shy, in many societies. And we so often go into a trance of feeling separate and not okay, that if we make it our habit to be witnessing each other and let each other know what we see, that we appreciate. We all need to be reminded, that mirroring of goodness. We need to remind our kids, our teens, our partners, our friends, in some way. And I just feel like if we left this, Julie, and both of us said, okay, that's the one thing I'm going to do more of, just at least some each day or whatever, that we'd be sending out ripples that are just so beautiful. So I just guess I want to invite us all, all of us that are part of this, to just be that mirror of goodness. It helps to bring out the goodness in each other.
Oh, I need a breath. It was very moving and so beautiful. What comes to me is that when we do that, we start right here, right now, that's what starts to shift. Like you said, I love this holding hands and waking up. I mean, it's like literally making me want to cry. So thank you.
We can't do it on our own. We need each other. I mean, we truly
Yeah,
are a collective. Yeah.
beautiful. Ooh,
Oh.
I'm crying. Okay, that's a first. I've never cried on this in the show or interview, but that was that touch. That was an alignment of, yep. I feel you. I feel that, and thank you so much for just holy moly, being such an evolved, real, raw, beautiful light. Like you just, I am honored you're here. This is such gorgeous wisdom that is truth for every single being.
Well, I feel like we're both in a way saying namaste, that to each other and to all those that are joining in, just this shared goodness, just honoring it. So thank you, dear.
No,